My name is Dana, and at 29, I once believed family meant unconditional love and protection. Growing up, my sister was my best friend, my confidant, my other half. But that bond shattered along with my cheekbone that night. The crack of bone against my face was not what hurt most. It was seeing her eyes light up as her boyfriend broke me. My face would never be the same. Neither would my silence. Before I tell you how my own sister orchestrated my assault, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you believe in standing up for yourself when the world expects you to stay silent. Growing up in Maple Creek, Wisconsin, a town so small that the welcome sign and the goodbye sign stood on the same post, Jordan and I were inseparable. Born only 2 years apart, we shared not just a bedroom with butterfly wallpaper and glow-in-the-dark stars, but also secrets, dreams, and an unspoken pact to protect each other. Our parents ran the local hardware store, which meant long hours away from home, leaving Jordan and me to rely on each other more than most siblings. I can still picture those summer afternoons when we would ride our bikes to Lake Willow, our legs pumping in unison as we raced down dirt roads, hair streaming behind us like matching flags. Jordan always wanted to win, even then. I usually let her. On rainy days, we built elaborate blanket forts in our living room, complete with flashlights for reading scary stories after dark. I was the creative one, designing intricate structures that would withstand our giggles and pillow fights. Jordan was the one who gave our forts the best names and created the rules for who could enter our magical realms. Looking back, I can see the early warning signs that I dismissed out of loyalty and love. Like when I won the 5th grade art competition with a watercolor painting of our town square. Principal Warner had called my name during the school assembly, and as I walked toward the stage, my heart thumping with pride, I heard Jordan telling her friend, just loud enough for me to hear, I actually helped her with the shading. She could never get that right on her own. Or the time I was selected for the advanced math program in 7th grade, and Jordan, who struggled with numbers, tore up my acceptance letter. I found the pieces in the trash and taped them back together. When I confronted her, she cried and said she was afraid I would leave her behind. I comforted her, promising we would always be sisters first. I believed her tears were genuine then. As we grew older, our differences became more pronounced. I was thoughtful and creative, happiest with a sketchbook in my lap or lost in the pages of a novel. Jordan was social and competitive, collecting friends and achievements like trophies. Where I saw collaboration, she saw competition. Where I found joy in creating, she found satisfaction in comparing. But still, I made excuses for her behavior. She is just insecure, I told myself. She needs more validation than I do. That is okay. We are different, but we are sisters. When it came time for college, I was accepted to the prestigious Westlake University for their fine arts program. I was thrilled but not entirely surprised when Jordan announced she had also been accepted to Westlake, despite having talked about attending state college with her boyfriend at the time. She had options, many good ones, but she chose to follow me. I remember moving into our separate apartments, only 3 blocks apart. Mine was a tiny studio with large windows perfect for natural light to paint by. Hers was a more modern 1-bedroom in a complex with a pool she never used. I helped her move in, arranging her furniture and hanging her curtains. As I placed the last throw pillow on her couch, she hugged me and said, "This is going to be the best time of our lives, Day. I am so glad we're doing this together." I hugged her back, excitement bubbling in my chest at the thought of navigating college with my sister by my side. We would have different majors, different friends, different experiences, but we would still have each other. I was so naive, so hopeful, so blind to the storm brewing inside her. That night, as I walked back to my own apartment, the sunset painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I called our parents to let them know we were both settled in. Mom cried, telling us to watch out for each other. Dad never won for many words, simply said, "You two are lucky to have each other. Everyone needs someone in their corner." I agreed wholeheartedly. Having Jordan nearby was a comfort, a piece of home in this new chapter of my life. Little did I know that having my sister in my corner was like having a boxer who was waiting for the perfect moment to deliver a knockout punch. University life started like a blank canvas, full of possibilities. I threw myself into my art classes, often losing track of time in the studio, emerging with paint-splattered clothes and a satisfied smile. My professors took notice early on. Professor Harlow, with her silver hair always twisted into a messy bun secured by a paintbrush, pulled me aside after class one day. "Dana, you have a unique perspective," she said, her weathered hands gesturing toward my work. "Your use of color and negative space speaks volumes. I think you should consider submitting to the freshman showcase." I blushed at her praise but took her advice. Meanwhile, Jordan was struggling with her business administration courses. Numbers had always been her weakness, and the rigorous curriculum at Westlake was pushing her to her limits. "Jordan, let me help you with that accounting homework," I offered one night when I found her surrounded by crumpled papers in her apartment, eyes red from frustration and lack of sleep. "I do not need your help," she snapped, then immediately softened. "I mean, I should figure this out myself. But can you just look over my final answers?" I spent 3 hours that night explaining concepts, checking her work, and rewriting notes she could study from later. I did not mind. She was my sister, and despite my own looming deadlines and projects, I made time for her. I always had. As weeks turned into months, I found my place at Westlake. I made friends with fellow art students like Arya, whose vibrant personality matched her colorful hair, and Thomas, whose quiet observations always made me see my work in new ways. When Arya suggested we start a weekly gathering at the local coffee shop to critique each other's work, I was excited. And of course, I invited Jordan to join us. "Hey, business students need creative friends too, right?" I said, nudging her playfully. To my surprise, Jordan became a regular at our art group meetings. At first, I was thrilled to see her engaging with my friends, asking questions about techniques, and even trying her hand at sketching. But gradually, something shifted. Jordan began arriving early to sit next to Thomas, laughing too loudly at his quiet jokes. She started bringing baked goods for everyone, making sure to mention that she had made them from scratch during her limited free time. One evening, as Arya was showing us a sculpture she was working on, Jordan interrupted. "That reminds me of this installation I saw in New York last summer," she said, though I knew for a fact she had never been to New York. "It was all about the juxtaposition of organic and industrial materials, just like what you are doing, Arya." I caught Arya's eye across the table. She knew Jordan was a business major, not an art student. But she just smiled politely and thanked her for the comparison. After that, I noticed how Jordan would steer conversations toward herself, how she would position herself as the center of our group. And my friends, being kind people, allowed it. They included her, made her feel welcome, never suspecting the undercurrent of competition that I was beginning to feel. The first major incident happened during midterm season. I had been working on a mixed media piece that combined photography and painting, a challenging technique that required precision and patience. The night before it was due, I left it in the studio to dry properly, planning to add the final touches in the morning. When I arrived the next day, I found a cup of coffee spilled across one corner of my canvas. Jordan was already there, frantically trying to blot the stain with paper towels. "I am so sorry, Day," she exclaimed, her eyes wide. "I was bringing you coffee as a surprise, and I tripped. I have been trying to fix it for the past hour." I swallowed my panic and disappointment. "It will be okay," I said, assessing the damage. "I can work with this. Make it part of the piece." And I did. I incorporated the stain into my work, creating a piece about accidents and adaptation. Professor Harlow was impressed by the concept, never knowing it had been born of necessity rather than intention. That afternoon, I received an email announcing my selection for the freshman showcase. Only 5 students had been chosen, and I was one of them. When I shared the news with Jordan over dinner that night, her smile did not reach her eyes. "Wow, that is amazing," she said, pushing pasta around her plate. "I guess spilling coffee on your work actually helped, huh?" "Lucky accident." There was something in her tone that made me wonder if it had been an accident at all. But I pushed the thought away. She was my sister. She would never sabotage me intentionally. Would she? The showcase brought more attention to my work than I had anticipated. A local arts magazine featured the student exhibition, and my piece received special mention. I was also invited to apply for a summer internship at the prestigious Grayson Gallery, an opportunity usually reserved for upperclassmen. As my artistic recognition grew, Jordan's comments became more frequent and cutting. I mean, anyone could throw paint on a canvas and call it art, right? She said one day, as we walked across campus, "You just got lucky with that professor who likes weird stuff." And when friends complimented my work, "Oh, you should have seen the stuff she made as a kid. Our mom still has those finger paintings on the fridge." She would laugh as if she was being affectionate, but her words undermined my growth and talent. One night, after she had made several such comments during a dinner with friends, I confronted her in private. "Jordan, it feels like you are trying to minimize my accomplishments," I said gently. "Is something bothering you?" She looked at me with genuine surprise, or at least what appeared to be genuine. "What are you talking about? I am your biggest fan. You are being paranoid, Day. Maybe the pressure is getting to you." I felt immediately guilty for accusing her. Maybe I was being overly sensitive. Maybe the competitive atmosphere of university was affecting me more than I realized. But then came the betrayal I could not ignore. The application deadline for the Grayson Gallery internship was approaching, and I had been working on my portfolio for weeks. The internship was highly selective, accepting only 2 students from the entire university each year. It was a perfect fit for my interests in mixed media and installation art. 2 days before the deadline, I was having coffee with Arya when she mentioned, casually, "I did not know your sister was interested in art internships too." I saw her dropping off her application for Grayson yesterday. I nearly choked on my latte. Jordan had applied for the same internship, despite having no formal art training, no portfolio, and most importantly, no interest in gallery work. When I confronted her about it that evening, she shrugged, her face a mask of innocence. "It sounded interesting," she said. "And besides, they look at more than just technical skill. They want people with different perspectives. A business perspective might be valuable to them." "But you never expressed any interest in gallery work before," I said, struggling to keep my voice calm. "You are majoring in business administration. So, people can have multiple interests, Dana. Why are you being so possessive? Are you afraid of a little competition?" Her words stung because they were so far from the truth. I had never feared fair competition. What hurt was knowing that this was not about Jordan wanting the internship. It was about her not wanting me to have it. That night, I cried myself to sleep for the first time since coming to college. Not because I feared losing the opportunity, but because I was losing my sister to a jealousy I could not understand or fix. The rift between us was growing wider, and I did not know how to bridge it anymore. What I did not realize then was that this internship application was just the beginning. Jordan's resentment was metastasizing, spreading through our relationship like a silent disease. And soon, she would find someone who would help her express that resentment in ways I could never have imagined. I first met Marcus at a campus coffee shop where I was sketching people while waiting for my art history study group. He walked in with an air of confidence that demanded attention, the kind of presence that shifts the energy of a room. Jordan followed half a step behind him, her eyes tracking his movements with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "Dana," Jordan called out, waving as if we had not seen each other in months rather than days. "This is Marcus, my boyfriend." Marcus was tall with sharp features and calculating eyes that seemed to assess me as we shook hands. His grip was unnecessarily firm, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "So you are the artist's sister," he said, more statement than question. "Jordan tells me you are quite talented." For an amateur, the qualification hung in the air between us. I smiled politely, ignoring the subtle dig. "Nice to meet you." Over the next few weeks, I saw the changes in Jordan. She began dressing differently, speaking differently, even laughing differently. Where once she had been confident and outspoken, she now constantly looked to Marcus for approval before expressing an opinion. She adopted his dismissive tone when discussing certain topics, particularly my art and accomplishments. One evening, Marcus and Jordan came to my apartment unannounced. I was working on a new piece, music playing softly as I lost myself in the creation process. "We brought dinner," Jordan announced, holding up a takeout bag. I cleared my workspace, grateful for the company despite the interruption. As we ate, Marcus dominated the conversation, talking about his family's real estate business and his plans to expand it after graduation. "Art is a nice hobby," he said when the conversation turned to my recent gallery showing. "But Dana, have you thought about something more practical? Not everyone can make a living creating pretty pictures." Jordan giggled. I have been telling her that for years. I felt my face flush. Actually, I have several commissions lined up, and my professors have connections with galleries in New York and Chicago. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Connections do not pay bills. Before I could respond, Jordan quickly changed the subject. Her eyes pleaded with me not to argue. I stayed quiet for her sake. These interactions became a pattern. Marcus would undermine me, Jordan would either join in or remain silent, and I would swallow my responses to keep the peace. I began to avoid them, making excuses when they invited me out, choosing to spend time with my art friends instead. Then came the dinner that changed everything. Our parents were visiting for the weekend, and we all met at an upscale restaurant downtown. Mom and Dad were excited to meet Marcus, the first serious boyfriend Jordan had introduced to the family. He charmed them completely. He pulled out chairs, ordered an expensive bottle of wine, and asked thoughtful questions about their hardware store. To anyone watching, he would have seemed the perfect gentleman. But beneath his polished exterior, I caught the subtle ways he continued to undermine me. "Dana was always the dreamer of the family, right?" he said during dessert, his tone making it sound like a flaw rather than a quality. Our father nodded proudly. "Always had her head in the clouds, but those clouds produced some beautiful artwork. Did you know her piece was selected for the university's promotional materials next year?" Marcus smiled tightly. "How fortunate. Some people just have all the luck." I caught Jordan's expression then, a flash of something dark crossing her face before she composed herself. It was not just annoyance or jealousy I saw. It was hatred, raw and unmistakable. In that moment, I realized that the sister I had grown up with, the one who had shared my secrets and dreams, was gone. In her place was someone who saw me not as family, but as competition to be eliminated. 3 days after that dinner, I received the email I had been waiting for. I had been awarded the Grayson Gallery summer internship. It was a paid position that included mentoring from established artists and the opportunity to display my own work in the gallery's Emerging Artists section. I was in the campus courtyard when I got the news, and I could not contain my excitement. I called my parents first, then texted my art friends, who responded with a flurry of congratulations and demands for a celebration dinner. Then I saw Jordan walking across the quad. Despite everything, my first instinct was to share my joy with my sister. I ran to her, phone in hand, ready to show her the email. "Jordan, I got it. The Grayson internship." Her face froze for a second before she manufactured a smile. "Oh. Congratulations. I guess they prefer traditional artists." I faltered. "Did you not get it?" She looked away. "No, but it is fine. I did not really want it anyway. I just applied to show support for the arts, you know. Besides, Marcus says nepotism is huge in the art world, so." The implication that I had not earned my place stung. "I am sorry you did not get it, but I worked really hard on my portfolio." This was not about connections. "Sure, whatever helps you sleep at night," she said, her voice sharp. "I have to go. Marcus is waiting for me." As she walked away, I noticed her pull out her phone and make a call, her shoulders tense. Later that evening, I overheard them in the stairwell of my apartment building. I had gone to take out the trash when when their voices carried up from the floor below. "I am so sick of living in her shadow," Jordan was saying, her voice thick with emotion. "Every single time, Dana gets everything handed to her, while I have to fight for scraps of recognition." Then Marcus, his voice low and intense. "You do not have to put up with this. There are ways to level the playing field." Their voices faded as they exited the building, but a chill ran through me. What had he meant by leveling the playing field? I did not have to wait long to find out. The following week, I was preparing for a major end-of-semester project, a mixed media installation that would count for 40% of my grade. I had been gathering materials for weeks, storing them in my assigned space in the art building. When I arrived at the studio one morning, I found my materials scattered across the floor, some damaged beyond repair. My carefully constructed armature, the framework that would support the entire piece, had been bent and broken. The studio monitor helped me file a report, but with no security cameras in the storage area, there was no way to prove who had done it. I spent the next 72 hours rebuilding everything from scratch, running on coffee and determination, missing other classes to make my deadline. Despite the setback, my project was well received. Professor Harlow praised my resilience and innovation, and several classmates commented on how I had turned adversity into opportunity. The local arts magazine even featured my installation in their campus spotlight section. The night the article was published online, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jordan standing there alone, a strange expression on her face. "I just wanted to say congratulations on the article," she said stiffly. "You always manage to come out on top, do not you?" "Thank you," I replied cautiously. "Do you want to come in?" She stepped into my apartment, looking around as if she had never been there before, though she had visited countless times. Her gaze landed on my sketchbook, open on the coffee table to preliminary drawings for my next project. "So, what are you working on now?" she asked, picking up the sketchbook without asking. I explained the concept for my next installation, a piece exploring family dynamics and the complexities of sibling relationships. As I spoke, her expression hardened. "So I am your muse now?" she asked coldly. "You are using our relationship for your art." "It is not specifically about us," I explained. "It is about siblings in general, the push and pull of closeness and individuality." She flipped through more pages, her movements becoming aggressive. Then she stopped, staring at a particular sketch. It was a rough drawing of two figures, one standing in light, one partially in shadow. "This is me, is not it?" she demanded. "You are portraying me as the villain in your little art story." "No, Jordan, you are misinterpreting." She threw the sketchbook across the room. It hit the wall with a thud, pages bending as it fell to the floor. I stared at her in shock. "You think you are so perfect," she hissed, tears in her eyes. "So talented, so special. Everyone loves Dana, the artistic genius. While I am just the jealous sister, right? The one living in your shadow." "Jordan, that is not true. I have always supported you. I have always been there for you." She laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. "You have always pitied me, you mean?" Poor Jordan, not as creative, not as smart, not as special. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "That is not how I see you at all. You are my sister. I love you." For a moment, vulnerability flashed across her face, a glimpse of the sister I had grown up with. Then her phone buzzed. She checked the message, and her expression hardened once more. "Marcus is waiting for me," she said, moving toward the door. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "You think you are so perfect, Dana. But you will not always be. Remember that." The door closed behind her, with a quiet click that somehow felt more ominous than a slam. I stood in the middle of my apartment, surrounded by my art, my accomplishments, suddenly feeling very alone and inexplicably afraid. That night, I called our parents, not to tell them about the fight, but to hear their voices, to ground myself in the family I thought I knew. Dad talked about the hardware store, Mom about her garden club. Normal things. Safe things. I almost convinced myself that everything would be okay. But as I hung up the phone, Jordan's parting words echoed in my mind. "You think you are so perfect, but you will not always be. I did not know it then, but she was making a promise. One that she and Marcus intended to keep. The weeks leading up to my first major gallery showing were a blur of activity. The university had selected several students to showcase their work at the Westlake Gallery, a prestigious venue that attracted art lovers and critics from across the state. It was an honor typically reserved for seniors, but my professor had championed my inclusion. I poured everything into preparing my exhibition pieces. Late nights in the studio became my norm, my hands constantly stained with paint and clay dust embedded under my fingernails. This opportunity could launch my career, opening doors that most art students only dreamed about. Strange things began happening as the opening approached. Materials went missing from my studio space. A canvas I had prepared with a special primer was found with a tear in it. My brushes appeared in different places than where I had left them, some with bristles damaged. At first, I attributed it to my own exhaustion and disorganization. But when I arrived one morning to find an entire series of sketches soaked with what smelled like turpentine, I could no longer deny that someone was sabotaging my work. I reported the incidents to campus security, but without evidence pointing to a specific person, there was little they could do except file reports and promise to increase patrols past the art building. I began taking my most important pieces home each night, no matter how unwieldy they were to transport. The night before the gallery opening, I received a text from Jordan. "Can we talk? I miss my sister. Meet me at the old photography studio in Millard Hall at 8. The message surprised me. We had barely spoken since our argument, exchanging only terse greetings when we ran into each other on campus. Part of me was suspicious of her sudden desire to reconcile, especially given the timing. But a larger part, the part that still believed in the sister I grew up with, wanted to repair our relationship. I texted back, "I will be there." Millard Hall was one of the oldest buildings on campus, housing specialized art facilities including the photography studios. At night, with most classes finished, it was eerily quiet, footsteps echoing down the tiled hallways. I found the door to Studio 3B unlocked, as Jordan had said it would be. The space was dimly lit, the large windows letting in the blue glow of twilight, equipment casting long shadows across the floor. "Jordan," I called out, my voice bouncing back at me. "Back here," her voice replied from the darkroom area. I made my way through the maze of enlargers and work tables. The red safety light was on in the darkroom, casting everything in a crimson glow that made it difficult to see clearly. Jordan stood in the corner, arms crossed, looking uncharacteristically nervous. Her hair was pulled back severely, her face pale in the red light. "Thanks for coming," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I did not think you would." "Of course I came. You are my sister." I hesitated, then added, "I have missed you too." She nodded, still not looking directly at me. I feel like things have gotten so messed up between us. I do not even know how we got here." I took a step toward her. "We can fix this, Jordan. Whatever this is, we can work through it. We always have." Finally, she met my gaze, and what I saw in her eyes made me stop. There was no warmth there, no sisterly affection. Only a cold determination that sent a chill down my spine. The darkroom door opened behind me. I turned to see Marcus step inside, his tall frame silhouetted against the doorway. He closed the door behind him with a soft click that sounded like a trap being sprung. "What is he doing here?" I asked, turning back to Jordan. "I thought this was between us." "Everything that involves Jordan involves me," Marcus said, moving closer, his footsteps slow and deliberate. "She tells me everything, Dana. About how you have always overshadowed her. How everyone favors you. How you stole her internship." "I did not steal anything," I protested, looking between them. "Jordan, you know that is not true. I worked for that internship." Jordan stepped forward, her face contorted with an anger I had never seen before. "You have everything. You always have. The talent, the praise, the opportunities. Do you know what it is like living in your shadow? Having people ask if I am Dana's sister, as if that is my only identity. I have never tried to overshadow you, I said, my voice rising with desperation. I have always supported you, always been there for you. She laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the darkroom walls. You have been there to remind everyone how much better you are. Little Miss Perfect with her amazing talent and her bright future. Marcus moved closer, positioning himself between me and the door. Your sister is tired of being second best, Dana. And I do not like seeing her hurt. Fear began to pool in my stomach as I realized the situation I was in. The isolated location, the late hour, the two of them blocking my exit. This had never been about reconciliation. What are you doing? I asked, my mouth dry. Teaching you a lesson in humility, Marcus replied, his voice terrifyingly calm. Everything happened so fast after that. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing my arm with bruising force. I tried to pull away, but he was much stronger. Jordan watched, making no move to help me, her eyes shining with a terrible anticipation. Stop. I pleaded. Jordan, tell him to stop. But she just stood there, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It is time someone showed you that you are not so special after all, she said. Marcus's first blow caught me in the stomach, knocking the wind out of me. As I doubled over, gasping for breath, his fist connected with my face. Pain exploded across my cheek, bright spots dancing in my vision. I stumbled backward, my hip hitting one of the work tables. Equipment clattered to the floor. I tried to run, to push past them toward the door, but Marcus grabbed me by the hair, yanking me back. You think you are better than everyone else, he growled, punctuating each word with another blow. Better than Jordan. But look at you now. The room was spinning, the red safety light blurring as tears and blood clouded my vision. Through it all, the worst pain was seeing Jordan, my own sister, watching with satisfaction as Marcus continued his assault. She made no move to stop him, offered no word of protest. Her silence was a betrayal worse than any physical blow. I felt rather than heard the crack when his fist connected with my cheekbone. A sickening sound, followed by a pain so intense that black edges crept into my vision. I screamed then, a primal sound that seemed to echo forever in the small space. That is enough, Marcus, Jordan finally said, though there was no remorse in her voice, only cool calculation. She has gotten the message. Marcus stepped back, breathing heavily, his knuckles bloody. I collapsed to my knees, one hand pressed to my face, feeling the unnatural give of bone beneath my fingers. My left eye was swelling shut, vision blurring. Through my one good eye, I watched as Jordan crouched down in front of me, her face close to mine. Now people will see who you really are, she whispered. Not so perfect anymore, are you, Dana? She stood, brushing off her jeans as if touching me had somehow dirtied them. Your gallery opening is tomorrow, right? Such a shame, you will not be looking your best. They left me there, bleeding on the darkroom floor. The door closed behind them, their footsteps fading down the hallway. I do not know how long I lay there, drifting in and out of consciousness, the metallic taste of blood filling my mouth. Eventually, survival instinct took over. I crawled toward my bag, each movement sending waves of agony through my face and body. My phone had fallen nearby. With trembling, bloodied fingers, I dialed 911. Help, I managed to whisper. Millard Hall. Studio 3B. Please. As I waited for help to arrive, clutching my shattered face, one thought kept cycling through my mind. My own sister had done this. My own sister had watched as I was broken. My own sister had smiled. The sound of distant sirens was the last thing I heard before darkness claimed me completely. I woke to the steady beep of monitors and the sterile smell of disinfectant. My first conscious thought was confusion. My second was pain, blinding and all-encompassing. I tried to open my eyes, but only my right one responded. My left remained swollen shut, a throbbing epicenter of agony. A nurse appeared in my limited field of vision, her expression softening when she saw I was awake. You are at University Medical Center, she explained gently. You were attacked. Do you remember what happened? Fragments of memory flashed through my mind. The darkroom. Marcus's fist. Jordan watching. The crack of bone. I nodded slightly, then immediately regretted the movement as pain lanced through my skull. Try not to move, the nurse cautioned. You have significant facial injuries. The doctor will be in soon to explain everything. Significant facial injuries. Her words echoed in my mind as I carefully raised my hand to my face, encountering bandages, swelling, and an unnatural hollowness beneath my left cheekbone that sent waves of nausea through me. The doctor arrived, a tall woman with kind eyes and a direct manner. She did not sugarcoat my condition. I had suffered multiple facial fractures, including a broken orbital socket and shattered cheekbone. Internal bleeding had caused pressure on my left eye, though the eye itself was intact. My jaw was fractured in 2 places. I had 3 broken ribs, a concussion, and numerous cuts and bruises. You will need reconstructive surgery, she explained. Several surgeries, actually. The first will be to stabilize the bone fragments and relieve the pressure on your eye. Without it, you risk permanent vision loss. I tried to speak, but my wired jaw made it nearly impossible. With painful effort, I managed to ask when the surgery would take place. Tomorrow morning, she replied. We wanted to wait until the swelling decreased, but we cannot delay further without risking complications. As she continued explaining the procedures, the risks, the recovery time, I felt a strange detachment, as if she were describing someone else's body, someone else's future. It was not until she mentioned the scars, the permanent changes to my appearance, that reality crashed back in. Even with the best reconstructive techniques, your face will not look exactly the same, she said gently. There will be visible scarring and possibly some asymmetry. I am sorry. I closed my good eye, tears slipping down my cheek into the bandages. My face. My identity. Forever altered by my own sister's jealousy and her boyfriend's fists. Later that day, my parents arrived, their faces etched with worry and disbelief. Mom broke down when she saw me, her sobs echoing in the small hospital room. Dad stood frozen in the doorway, his normally ruddy face pale with shock. The police had already spoken to me briefly, taking my statement about the attack. I had told them everything, including Jordan's involvement. The detective had looked skeptical when I mentioned my sister, making notes but offering no reassurances about arrests or justice. Who would do this to you? Mom kept asking, smoothing my hair back from my forehead, careful to avoid the bruises. Why would anyone want to hurt you? I tried to tell them, to form the words around my wired jaw, but it was the detective who finally explained, having returned to speak with my parents. Your daughter has accused her sister, Jordan, and Jordan's boyfriend, Marcus, of planning and executing this attack, he said, his tone professional but compassionate. Mom shook her head vehemently. No, that cannot be right. Jordan would never, she could not, they must have the wrong information. Dad remained silent, his hands gripping the back of a chair so tightly his knuckles turned white. We are investigating all leads, the detective assured them. We will need to speak with Jordan and Marcus, of course. As if summoned by their names, there was a commotion in the hallway. Jordan's voice, high and distressed, argued with a nurse about visiting hours. Then she was there in the doorway, her face a perfect mask of shock and concern. Marcus stood behind her, his expression appropriately somber, his hands, the hands that had shattered my face, shoved innocently into his pockets. Oh my God, Dana. Jordan rushed to my bedside, reaching for my hand. I flinched away, unable to bear her touch. Mom, Dad, I came as soon as I heard. Who did this to her? The audacity of her performance struck me speechless. Even through the haze of pain medication, I recognized the calculated nature of her visit, the way she had positioned herself as the concerned sister rather than the architect of my suffering. The detective watched the interaction closely, his eyes missing nothing. Ms. Jordan Matthews. He asked. I would like to speak with you and Mr. Marcus Reeves outside, please. Jordan blinked, the picture of innocent confusion. Of course, anything to help find who hurt my sister. As they left the room, I caught Marcus's eye. There was no remorse there, only a cold warning. A threat that needed no words. Say nothing, or next time will be worse. The first surgery lasted 6 hours. I emerged with more bandages, more pain, and a face held together with titanium plates and screws. The second surgery followed 3 days later, then a third a week after that. Each procedure designed to rebuild what had been so violently destroyed. Between surgeries, I learned what was happening outside my hospital room. Jordan had told the police, our parents, anyone who would listen, that I was unstable, jealous of her relationship with Marcus, prone to dramatic accusations. She suggested that I had been attacked by someone from the art department, a rival student perhaps, or even that I had provoked a confrontation with strangers. Most devastating was learning that our parents believed her. They sat by my hospital bed, holding my hand, assuring me that the police would find whoever had hurt me, while simultaneously accepting Jordan's version of events. They would not, believe that one daughter could orchestrate such violence against another. As for my gallery opening, it had proceeded without me. Professor Harlow had hung my work, placed a discreet note explaining my absence due to medical emergency, and apparently the show had been well received. I should have felt grateful, but all I felt was hollow. When I was finally released from the hospital after 2 weeks, my parents wanted me to come home to Wisconsin to recover. But home meant being near Jordan, who was planning to return for the summer as well. The thought of being under the same roof as her made me physically ill. "I will stay in my apartment," I insisted through my still healing jaw. "I have friends here who can help me. And I need to be near my doctors for follow-up appointments." They reluctantly agreed, though Mom stayed for an additional week to help me adjust. She cleaned my apartment, cooked meals I could barely eat with my wired jaw, and hovered anxiously whenever I looked in a mirror, which I avoided as much as possible. When she finally left, extracting promises that I would call every day and come home as soon as I felt able, I was left alone with my new reality. My face, once familiar, was now a landscape of bruises in various stages of healing, stitches creating roadmaps across my skin, and an asymmetry that made me look like a funhouse mirror version of myself. The police investigation stalled. Without witnesses or cameras in the darkroom, it was my word against theirs. Marcus had an alibi, carefully constructed, placing him at a campus bar with friends at the time of the attack. Jordan claimed she had been at the library, though no one could confirm seeing her there. My friends tried to help. Arya brought assignments from classes I was missing. Thomas set up a small studio space in my apartment so I could work on art therapy exercises recommended by my counselor. But I withdrew from them, unable to bear their pity, their horror at what had been done to me. The weeks blurred together in a haze of pain medication, sleepless nights, and paralyzing anxiety. I jumped at unexpected noises. I avoided campus, taking incompletes in my classes rather than risking running into Jordan or Marcus. I lost the Grayson Gallery internship, unable to fulfill the requirements in my current condition. Meanwhile, social media showed me glimpses of Jordan's life, continuing uninterrupted. Photos of her and Marcus at parties, at the beach, enjoying the summer while I hid in my darkened apartment, touching the unfamiliar planes of my face and wondering if I would ever feel like myself again. One particularly dark night, after seeing a photo of Jordan wearing a necklace I recognized as our grandmother's, a family heirloom she had likely received from our parents as a gift, I sat on my bathroom floor and truly contemplated giving up. Not just on justice, but on everything. The pain, both physical and emotional, seemed insurmountable. The future I had planned, that I had worked so hard for, felt irretrievably lost. I stared at my reflection, at the stranger looking back at me. The left side of my face was still swollen, the cheekbone now artificially heightened by the titanium plate beneath it. A jagged scar ran from my temple to the corner of my mouth, still angry and red despite the surgeon's careful work. My once expressive face now felt frozen, emotions difficult to display through the damaged nerves and healing tissue. Is this it? I asked my reflection. Is this how my story ends? Broken by my own sister, hiding in shame while she lives her life freely. The question hung in the air between me and my reflection. And in that moment of despair, something unexpected happened. A flicker of the old Dana, the one who had fought for her art, who had never backed down from a challenge, sparked in my one fully functioning eye. "No," I said aloud, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "This is not how my story ends. This is not who I am. I had been a victim, but I refused to remain one. Jordan might have taken my face, my internship, even my parents' unconditional trust. But she would not take my voice. Not anymore. That night, I made a decision. I would not stay silent. I would not hide. And most importantly, I would not let them get away with what they had done to me. It was time to fight back. My recovery room had become my prison, but that night, it transformed into my war room. With trembling hands but newfound resolve, I opened my laptop and began my methodical counterattack. The artist in me knew that every masterpiece required planning, precision, and passion. This would be no different. First, I needed evidence. The police investigation had stalled because it was my word against theirs, and Jordan had spent years perfecting her innocent act. I made a list of potential sources of proof, starting with the most obvious. Security cameras. While there were no cameras inside the photography studio, Muttered Hall itself had surveillance at all exterior doors. The next morning, moving slowly due to my still healing ribs, I visited the campus security office. The officer at the desk recognized me immediately, eyes widening slightly at my damaged face before quickly composing himself. "Ms. Matthews," he said, professional but sympathetic. "What can I do for you?" "I need to know if you still have the security footage from Muttered Hall on the night of my attack," I said, my speech still slightly impaired by my healing jaw. He frowned. "That would have been included in the police investigation." "Would have been," I repeated. "But was it? Did anyone actually request it?" His hesitation told me everything. "I am requesting it now," I said firmly. "I was attacked on university property. I have a right to see who entered and exited that building." After some discussion with his supervisor, he agreed to review the footage with me. We spent 3 hours going through videos from multiple cameras. And there it was, unmistakable. Jordan and Marcus entering the west door of Muttered Hall at 7:45, 15 minutes before I arrived. Then at 8:32, them leaving together, Marcus checking his knuckles, Jordan looking back over her shoulder. The security officer stared at the screen, then at me. "I will call Detective Rivera right now," he said, reaching for the phone. That was just the beginning. I remembered that Marcus had texted someone right before the attack. If I could get access to their phone records, those messages would reveal their premeditation. I called Detective Rivera myself, no longer willing to wait for justice to find me. "I have evidence," I told him. "Security footage proving they were there. And I believe there will be text messages confirming they planned this." He listened more carefully this time. The footage was enough to bring them in for questioning, to get a warrant for their phones. Things were finally moving. But I did not stop there. I reached out to my former classmates, asking if anyone had noticed anything strange in the days leading up to my attack. Had they seen Jordan or Marcus near my studio space when materials went missing? Had they overheard conversations, noticed unusual behavior? Arya came forward, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. She had seen Marcus in the art building the day my canvas was damaged, though he had no classes there. Another student, someone I barely knew, mentioned overhearing Jordan and Marcus arguing about something Jordan called their plan, though he had thought nothing of it at the time. Piece by piece, I was building my case. Detective Rivera called with updates periodically. The text messages had been recovered, and they were damning. Messages between Jordan and Marcus discussing how to lure me to the studio, Marcus assuring her that he would make sure I learned my lesson, Jordan expressing concern not about my welfare, but about whether they would get caught. "They are claiming the texts were about something else," Rivera told me. "But combined with the security footage and witness statements, we have enough for the district attorney to press charges." The calls from my parents came next. Mom in tears, Dad in stoic disbelief. They had been contacted by the police. Jordan was being formally charged with conspiracy to commit aggravated assault. Marcus faced more serious charges: aggravated assault, battery with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. She says it is a misunderstanding. Mom sobbed over the phone. She would never hurt you. You know that, right? I closed my eyes, pain that had nothing to do with my physical injuries washing over me. I know what happened, Mom. I was there. I saw her face when Marcus was hitting me. She watched. She planned it. There was a long silence, then Dad's voice, rough with emotion. We are coming up there. This weekend. We need to see both of you to understand what is happening. The meeting with my parents was one of the hardest moments of my recovery. They arrived at my apartment looking aged beyond their years, caught between their daughters in a conflict they could never have imagined. I showed them the security footage, explained about the text messages, presented the case I had helped build piece by careful piece. Mom cried throughout, occasionally shaking her head in denial. Dad listened in stone-faced silence, only his whitening knuckles betraying his distress. When I finished, he asked one question. Why? Why would Jordan do this? I told them everything then. The years of growing jealousy, the escalating sabotage, the competitive rage that had consumed Jordan until she saw me not as a sister, but as an obstacle to be removed. I showed them the healed scars from my multiple surgeries, the permanent changes to my face that no amount of medical intervention could fully correct. By the end, something had shifted. Mom still cried, but her eyes held a different kind of pain now, the pain of recognition. Dad stood and paced the small apartment, his movements agitated. We failed you both, he said finally. We should have seen this coming. Should have addressed Jordan's issues years ago. It was the first acknowledgement that something had been deeply wrong, that this was not a misunderstanding, but the culmination of a pattern they had missed or dismissed. It was a small vindication, but an important one. The local media picked up the story. University student attacked in art studio. Sister and boyfriend charged. My privacy was invaded all over again as reporters sought comments. Photographers tried to capture images of my scarred face. Social media exploded with opinions from people who knew nothing of our family but felt entitled to judge. I declined all interview requests until a journalist from the university paper approached me differently. She did not want to sensationalize my attack, but to discuss the broader issues it represented. Sibling abuse, the failures of campus security, the challenges of seeking justice as a victim. I agreed to speak with her on my terms. The resulting article was thoughtful and nuanced, focusing not on the lurid details of my injuries, but on my fight for justice and my determination to reclaim my life and my art. It humanized me in a way that countered Jordan's narrative of me as unstable or vindictive. Former friends who had believed Jordan's version of events began reaching out, offering apologies and support. Some I accepted, others I did not. I was learning to be selective about who I allowed into my healing space. The preliminary hearing was scheduled for early fall, just as the new semester was beginning. I forced myself to return to campus, to walk the same paths where I had once felt so at home, now hyper-aware of stares and whispers that followed me. My face, still bearing the visible evidence of violence, made anonymity impossible. In the courthouse, I saw Jordan for the first time since the attack. She sat beside her lawyer, wearing a conservative dress, her hair pulled back neatly, the picture of a wrongfully accused young woman. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I expected to see hatred, defiance, perhaps even remorse. Instead, I saw fear. For the first time, my sister was afraid of me, or rather, afraid of the truth I carried. Marcus sat at a separate table with his own attorney, his former confidence diminished by the orange jumpsuit he wore, having been unable to make bail due to the severity of the charges and a previous assault charge that had come to light during the investigation. I testified clearly and calmly, recounting the events leading up to the attack and the attack itself. I described Jordan's words, her expression as she watched, her final statement before leaving me bleeding on the floor. I did not embellish or exaggerate. I did not need to. The truth was damning enough. The prosecution presented the text messages, the security footage, the witness statements. They showed photographs of my injuries immediately after the attack and medical reports, detailing the extensive damage to my face and body. And then something unexpected happened. Marcus's attorney approached the prosecution during a recess. When court resumed, the district attorney announced that Marcus had agreed to testify against Jordan in exchange for reduced charges. From the witness stand, Marcus detailed how Jordan had been the driving force behind the attack. It was her idea, he claimed. She had been obsessed with bringing me down, consumed by jealousy over my success. She had manipulated him, used his feelings for her to turn him into her weapon. Whether his account was entirely truthful or partially self-serving did not matter. The effect on Jordan was immediate and devastating. Her carefully constructed facade crumbled as her boyfriend betrayed her, just as thoroughly as she had betrayed me. The judge found sufficient evidence to proceed to trial for both of them. Marcus accepted a plea deal, agreeing to serve 5 years for aggravated assault. Jordan, facing trial alone now, finally approached her attorney about a plea as well. In the end, Jordan pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit aggravated assault and was sentenced to 3 years, with the possibility of parole after 18 months. As she was led away, she looked back at me one last time. Her expression was complex, a mixture of anger, shame, and something that might have been the first genuine remorse I had seen from her. I was given the opportunity to deliver a victim impact statement at her sentencing. Standing at the podium, my scars visible to everyone in the courtroom, I spoke not only about the physical pain and permanent damage I had suffered, but about the deeper wounds of betrayal. The sister I grew up with, the person I trusted most in the world, orchestrated an attack that was meant to destroy not just my face but my future, I said, my voice steady. Every time I look in the mirror, I am reminded of that betrayal. But I refuse to be defined by what was done to me. I refuse to be silenced. And I refuse to let this act of violence be the end of my story. As I spoke, I watched Jordan's shoulders begin to shake. For the first time since the attack, she broke down completely, sobs racking her body as the full weight of her actions and their consequences finally seemed to register. Justice had been served, but it brought me no joy, only a grim satisfaction that the truth had prevailed and that neither Jordan nor Marcus would be able to hurt anyone else for some time. The greater victory was internal, the knowledge that I had fought back, that I had refused to be their silent victim. As I left the courthouse that day, a reporter called out, asking how it felt to win. I paused, considering the question. This was never about winning, I replied. It was about standing up for the truth. About refusing to let violence have the final word. I did not win today. But I did reclaim my voice. And that is enough. The day after the sentencing, I woke before dawn and stood at my apartment window, watching the sky transition from black to indigo to the soft pink of morning. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe fully, the weight of seeking justice no longer pressing on my chest. The road ahead would not be easy, but at least now I could see it stretching before me, no longer obscured by fear and uncertainty. Physical healing came in increments so small they were almost imperceptible day to day. The angry red of my scars faded gradually to pink, then to silvery lines that caught the light differently than my unscarred skin. The pain subsided from sharp and constant to a dull ache that flared only with changes in weather or excessive fatigue. My final reconstructive surgery, a minor procedure to improve nerve function around my left eye, left me with better mobility in my expressions, though I would never again have the same smile I had before. Emotional healing was messier, less linear. There were days when I felt strong and forward-looking, and days when grief and anger dragged me back into darkness. My therapist, Dr. Lin, guided me through the process with patience and insight. Trauma changes us, she said during one particularly difficult session. The goal is not to become who you were before, because that person no longer exists. The goal is to integrate what happened into who you are becoming. I resisted this idea at first. I wanted to reclaim exactly who I had been before Marcus's. Fists and Jordan's betrayal had shattered more than just bone. Eventually, I came to understand that Dr. Lin was right. I would never be pre-attack Dana again, but I could be something new, something perhaps even stronger. Returning to my art became a critical part of my healing journey. For weeks after the attack, I had been unable to create anything. The thought of picking up a brush or standing before a canvas filled me with paralyzing anxiety. What if the talent had been beaten out of me, along with my former face? What if Jordan had succeeded in destroying the core of who I was? Thomas, who had stood by me throughout the ordeal, suggested we start small. One evening, he brought over a set of charcoals and a small sketch pad. "Just make a mark," he said, placing the materials on my coffee table. "Any mark. It does not have to be good. It does not have to mean anything." I stared at the blank page for nearly an hour before finally picking up a piece of charcoal. The first stroke was hesitant, barely visible. The second was firmer. By the 10th, I was drawing with purpose, tears streaming down my face as something broke loose inside me, a dam of emotion finding release through the movement of my hand across paper. What emerged was not beautiful in any conventional sense, a dark tangle of lines that conveyed the chaos and pain I had been carrying. But it was honest. It was mine. And it was the beginning of finding my way back to myself through art. Gradually, I expanded my creative practice, moving from small sketches to larger works, from private expression to pieces I shared first with my therapist, then with close friends, and finally with the public. My art had changed just as I had. It was darker now, more complex, dealing with themes of transformation, resilience, and the duality of human nature. But it was also more powerful, reaching people in ways my earlier work never had. 6 months after the sentencing, I held my first solo exhibition at a small but respected gallery downtown. The centerpiece was a self-portrait, unlike any I had created before. Using mixed media, I had depicted my face in layers, the broken understructure visible beneath the healing surface, scars rendered not as flaws but as seams of gold, inspired by the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, highlighting rather than hiding the damage. I titled it Reconstituted. The exhibition received attention not just locally, but nationally, with an arts journal publishing a feature that characterized my work as a meditation on trauma and transcendence. When a reporter asked if I worried that my success was tied to the sensational aspects of my story rather than the merit of my art, I considered the question carefully. "My art and my experiences cannot be separated," I replied. "What happened to me is now part of my creative voice. But I believe the work stands on its own, speaking to universal experiences of betrayal, resilience, and reinvention. Whether people are initially drawn to it because of my story does not matter as much as whether it resonates with them once they engage with it." The Grayson Gallery, which had rescinded my internship during my recovery, reached out with an offer for a different position, one created specifically for me to work with young artists who had faced trauma. I accepted, finding unexpected fulfillment in helping others discover, as I had, that creativity could be a pathway through pain. My parents struggled to reconcile the daughter they had raised with the person capable of such calculated cruelty. They attended the trial, heard the evidence, sat through Marcus's testimony about Jordan's orchestration of the attack. They could no longer deny what had happened, yet still struggled to understand how it had come to this. "We failed you both," Mom said during one of their visits, echoing Dad's earlier words. "We should have seen Jordan's jealousy for what it was, should have addressed it when you were children." I did not disagree, but neither did I hold them responsible for Jordan's choices. "We all missed the signs," I said. Or saw them, but did not want to believe what they meant. They visited Jordan in prison, trying to understand, trying to help her see the magnitude of what she had done. Their reports of these visits were always vague, but I gathered that Jordan was not yet ready or able to take full responsibility, still caught in narratives of justification and displacement of blame. I chose not to visit her myself, not out of hatred, but out of self-preservation. Dr. Lin helped me understand that forgiveness did not require reconciliation, that I could release the corrosive anger I felt toward my sister without allowing her back into my life. Forgiveness is not about the other person, she explained. It is about freeing yourself from the burden of hatred. It does not mean what they did was acceptable, and it does not obligate you to trust them again. This perspective helped me navigate the complex emotions that surfaced each time I received a letter from Jordan. She began writing to me 6 months into her sentence, first with defensive justifications, then gradually with what appeared to be growing insight into the depth of her actions. I read each letter carefully, discussed them with Dr. Lin, but did not reply. I was not ready, and might never be, to reestablish that connection. Meanwhile, I built new relationships and strengthened those that had weathered the storm with me. Arya and Thomas remained steadfast friends, neither pitying me nor treating me as defined by my trauma. New friends entered my life as well, many through the art community, people who knew my story but saw beyond it to who I was becoming. I started a support group for survivors of violence, creating a safe space for sharing experiences and strategies for healing. What began as 4 people meeting in the back room of a coffee shop grew into a recognized community resource, eventually partnering with the university to improve campus safety policies and victim support services. 2 years after the attack, I received an email from the curator of a major gallery in Chicago. They were planning an exhibition centered on art as a response to trauma and wanted to include several of my pieces. The opportunity would mean national exposure, connections with established artists, and a significant step forward in my career. As I stood in that Chicago gallery on opening night, surrounded by people engaging thoughtfully with my work, I was struck by how far I had come from that broken girl on the darkroom floor. My face would never be the same, the scars both visible and invisible remained. But I had refused to be defined by what was done to me. I had reclaimed my voice, my art, and my future. Later that evening, I stepped outside for a moment of quiet and found myself staring up at the vast urban sky, stars barely visible through the city lights. I thought about the long journey from victim to survivor to thriver, about the unexpected strength I had found in my deepest vulnerability. I thought about Jordan, still serving her sentence, and felt not hatred but a complicated sadness for all that had been lost. The most profound lesson I had learned was not about betrayal or justice, though those had shaped me irrevocably. It was about the power of owning your own story, of refusing to be silenced even when the world expects your shame, of finding beauty not despite brokenness, but within it. My face had been shattered by hatred, but I had put myself back together with purpose and determination. The result was not perfect, not unmarked, but it was authentically mine. Every scar told a story of survival. Every asymmetry spoke of balance, found despite imbalance imposed. My reflection would always show the evidence of what had been done to me, but it also showed who I had chosen to become in response. I am not the same person I was before the attack, nor would I want to be. Pain either breaks you completely or breaks you open, creating space for new growth, new understanding, new capacity for compassion. I chose the latter, not because I am naturally brave or wise, but because the alternative was to let Jordan and Marcus take even more from me than they already had, and I refused to give them that power. If you are watching this and carrying your own scars, visible or invisible, know that your wounds do not define you. Your response to them does. Stand in your truth, speak it without shame, and watch as it transforms from a burden to a source of unexpected power. The people who try to break you do not get to write the end of your story. That privilege belongs to you alone. Thank you for listening to my journey. If my story resonated with you in any way, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear that survival is possible, that healing is possible, that beauty can emerge from the darkest experiences. Leave a comment below about a time you found strength you did not know you had. Subscribe if you would like to hear more stories of resilience, and remember that whatever you are facing, you are not facing it alone. We are all reconstituted in some way, all walking amalgamations of our wounds and our healing, all works in progress deserving of compassion, especially from ourselves.